Jason Rudd.
Howdy, folks.
How you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. Coming live from Austin, Texas.
Oh man, as we spoke offline, I encourage people to go to Dave Croft's interview to listen to all you because you really get into stuff like mastering and things that are really important that we will probably touch briefly today, but I feel like I will leave a link in the show notes for that interview because that would be a great place to know the fundamentals and what you are, who you are, kind of thing. But you have such a mm, you have such a community energy about you, and you have so much of a bigger than life, bigger than you energy, because we got to meet in real life, right?
That's right.
And a few times we met in PMC, and you're this humble dude, and I didn't even we sat in the same table and we were just like shooting the shit, talking about being a music whore. By the way, we can cuss here. And
Great.
Yeah,
I
that was
am a music slut.
music slut. Yeah, it was yeah, you use the term slut. But yeah, J- Jason presented himself as a music slut. He didn't. So I mean, like, to be honest, that's the type of people I'm kind of looking to hang out around. Like people who who love what they do, who put all their efforts and love and blood, sweat, and tears into this craft, but also like don't take it too seriously. So I think that'll be our rabbit hole today, and that'll be what
All
we
right.
come back to, because that's your energy. But I feel like let's let us give your story briefly, and then get into this good stuff.
Great. I knew I wanted to be involved in music from a very early age, as a lot of musicians and producers do. Um, I actually this is my story. Um, I got a toy piano and a sight reading of the pop hits of the day sort of book, and began learning some songs on the piano and picking out melodies. And so I was raised by my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and she thought musicians were bums. And I had no idea what I had waded into, but she actually dissuaded me away from musicianship for several years. And so I skipped that sort of junior high era where a lot of kids get into band. And thank God I did, because I would not have stuck with it. Um, I found my way back into music through sort of a back door. At age 15, I got a guitar and again started trying to figuring out on my own. And at that point, my grandmother took pity on me and introduced me to one of my great uncles that back in the old days, because we're from Fort Worth, Texas. We're five generations deep in Fort Worth. There was a time when my great uncle had opened for the Western swing great Bob Wills, and so she took me to meet him, and he said, "Well, play me a song," and I played him a Metallica song, and he looked at me kind of crazy, as somebody that came up on Bob Wills would upon hearing a Metallica song for the first time, and he said, "Well, how many more of those do you know?" And I played a couple more, and he's like, "You need a real guitar and you need lessons." And I was like a little taken aback, but the man bought me a proper guitar that day and enrolled me in lessons with a guy, Mark Sparky Mateka, who's for the past probably 20 years been the guitar player for Leonard Skinner. And so that's where I learned privately, I learned music. And I said that about band because when I finally saw like a DCI performance, which is amazing, I'm like, I would not fit in there. And if I had at a young age been told that that's what music is about, I would have bailed. So that's how I got started in music. I went to the University of North Texas myself for a year, found out how good those guys really could play, and that's where I made the decision I wanted to be sort of on the back end. Oh my God! Look who came to see
There's a
us.
there, and
Forgive me,
you're not gonna see this on Dave's episode, yo. I've checked out Dave's episode, and
Winston Doctor, to say
there's
hello,
no pit bull
Leroy.
in there. Oh my god. Oh my god. This has to be on YouTube. This is going on YouTube.
Yes.
All right. And now
Okay, check
everybody
what
who
you got
listens to
now.
this has to go on YouTube. There's a
So
whoa.
he jumps in on some of my calls,
That's that was an that was just like a comic break to this heavy story. Wow.
So I got a degree in music business and found myself working in jingle studios. And I took one of the worst jobs I think I might have covered this on Dave's, but I took a job that was full time in the 90s recording telephone on hold messages.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Uh, but I looked at it like, hey, this is my chance to learn um, how to record the human voice, which is kind of hard. I mean, it's got a pretty wide dynamic range. There's so many different sounds. It really gave me a chance to learn by ear how to match the mic to the performer and get that correct. And I think that's a skill that has stuck with me. And then in 1999, I applied for a job at First Com Music as an assistant mastering engineer, and that's how I got my foot in the door over there. I was actually, and I still, I'll be bold enough to make this comment, but I think I'm the fastest editor in the West. I think I can cut music faster than anyone else.
Oh wow.
Um, and that sort of was what paid my bills for several years at First Com. And so at First Com, but putting the mastering and the audio part aside, like I've got some really good stories, and I was going to tell you this one story. So First Com was founded by an entrepreneur, a guy named Jim Long, who's a very respected entrepreneur in this industry, and has done a lot of great stuff for the industry. He did not like me. So I actually got in a court deposition once over some things. He actually started a lawsuit because he believed that he invented stems in the marketplace. And to his credit, I think he might have been the first person to market a product that had remixable stems. And it was on a CD, an audio CD. So you would play the stems in one at a time and then sort of sync them up. And so in this deposition, they're asking me questions about whatever, and our lawyer had prepped me, answer things a certain way. And then they asked me a question that no one had prepped me for. And the question was, are you aware of any preceding technology that covers this sort of intellectual idea? And I said, well, yeah. And the whole room stops and everyone's looking at me. And I'm just, kid. I was like 24 years old or something. And the attorney asked me, well, what might that be? I said, well, that's cell sync recording. Les Paul invented that in the 50s. And Jim Long threw his pencil, and threw his hands in the air and started cussing and jumped up, walked out of the room. And we had to reconvene the deposition after like a 20-minute break. So that that's some of the things that I've been through in this industry that, I think would are a better story for your podcast.
Mm, wow. Like, where do I start? So as we said, like it's like a tree. We have so many branches we can go on from this, and thank you for speaking so openly about that kind of that area, because yes, like I mean, this is not an area that I hear about every day. It's like more like in podcasts. It's more like, how do you do it? How does this work? I mean, uh, it's so interesting to see how, when somebody actually talks from knowledge, from truth, from everything, it can completely disrupt procedures. And the reason I'm saying that is because that's how I feel like where my careers have taken the best turns, where I wasn't aware of the questions that I'm being asked necessarily, but I'm like, I'm a go there. Like, I'm a trust and I'm a go there, right? And I feel like that's what you did, right? In that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
um, did what I thought was the right thing to do in that time and space. Let's
Yeah.
just tell the truth.
And where do you feel like it led you, that whole situation? I mean, like, from learning business to actually experiencing the business side to experiencing the law side in a very very early stage. Like, how did that inspire your career going forward?
Well, it was pretty scary, honestly, and it made me realize, like, you should kind of watch your mouth, which is, I mean, that's fundamental life advice in any situation, you know. Um, and it gave me a peek into the sort of higher level workings amongst all of the business owners and managers, and sort of what puppeteers were actually at play within the industry, and where the power was sort of located. Um, so it helped me sort of learn where my place in the pecking order was, and to kind of mind it a little bit.
Yeah, so that begs the question: what is the top of this pyramid, and where are you now?
It's funny. When I started in this industry, there were a lot of medium sized companies that were making a lot of money. And in the late 90s and through the aughts, um, a lot of purchases happened and a lot of the publishing entities traded hands. And now the end result is that a lot of those mid tier companies are owned by publishing arms of major labels. But when I started in this industry, it was not that way. So, for example, like, FirstCom was an independent organization. Killer Tracks was an independent organization, and I guess they got bought by BMG. And then at some juncture, FirstCom was purchased by BMG as well. Then at another juncture later, all of those assets were purchased by Universal Music Publishing. Um, FirstCom and Killer Tracks remained separate companies for almost 2 decades, until 2 years ago they decided to merge them into what is now Universal Production Music. Um, Warner Chappell Music has some of its material has roots in the 615 Music Library, which was started out of Nashville by Randy. Oh my God! I hope he doesn't see this podcast and see that I forgot his name.
Shout out to Randy.
Uh,
We're looking him up. We got to look him up.
Watchler.
Randy Wassler. This don't worry, it will be edited to a short piece where it will just sound like you know him. Don't worry, I got you.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, 615 was originally, founded by Randy Watchler, who is now running 11 Music with his son, and super nice people, great company. But a lot of these larger publishing arms of majors, they all have a toe in production music now. And now it's become an arms race, which is a, a new thing in the past few years. Because you got to consider, I mean, how many copyrights does Warner Chappell hold? I really don't know the answer. Universal production music has to be 400,000 titles, maybe 500,000. Um, People say that APM has over 1 million copyrights. How does a small tier company this year break into that? Uh, I mean, I'm actively doing it, and I'm still not sure if I know the answer. I know that over the past 2 years, we've built Level 77 from a spark into a full roaring fire. And we were very proud last spring spring of 2023, we were very proud when we crossed 10,000 works. I mean, that's a lot of music.
It is.
Um, I think the upside for a company like us is that all that music hasn't been ran through, you know, uh, and it's been produced in the past 2 years, you know. Whereas some of the larger publishing companies, they may have massive holdings, but that's music that was produced in the aughts or in the 90s or even in the late 1980s. So how many viable copyrights do those larger publishers have? I don't know. That's really the question of the hour, though. And so that's where we're at, is trying to compete against them in almost a David versus Goliath kind of approach.
Wow. Okay, that there are so many places we can go from here, but today you see like a lot of even in PMC there's a lot of meetings of like smaller labels with a Warner Chappell or Universal or whatnot. They want to be sub published. Why would a company want sub publishing? And also, let's take it to even Dan Graham's book. Like he says, well, if a label has connections, has Universal sub publishing them, then it's a good thing. Then my question to you is like, what does it mean for a label to be to have their catalog sub published with a Universal or Warner Chappell or whatever?
That's a great question. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people don't understand the value of or the importance of, or what the trade off is that they're giving up. Um, and we actually, at Level 77, we've even had an offer on the table to place our material with one of the larger publishers who, out of respect to them, I don't want to mention them, but we have a very good relationship with them, even still. In fact, we also do some custom work for them. And they're a great label. We chose to strike out with on our own with an independent path. Um, was it the wise decision? I hope so. Time's going to tell. But for a small label like us that holds 10,000 copyrights, or I think right now we're probably closer to 15,000, because we are still aggressively growing the catalog, and we are acting as a sub publisher as well here in the States for other libraries internationally. Here's the long and short of it. It's all about that sales team.
Hmm.
And a company like Universal has a sales team that is well defined and is very strong. Um, these are people that have done customer research and market research. They know who the customers are. Um, they know where to find new customers. They have goals that they have to meet in terms of how many new customers they have to find, how many existing blanket licenses they need to renew. They have a goal for how much needle drop business they need to bring in for the people that, for the clients that would prefer a single use license instead of a blanket or a production blanket. So all those things are like predetermined, and those salespeople have to meet goals or they get in trouble. And it's a tough game. Though I have nothing but respect for production music salespeople because it's hard. And frankly, how do I say? Let me think of how to say this. Like, if you're that good, maybe you should be selling high-end luxury cars or something where there's like a lot larger um, price tag for you to calculate your commission off of.
Mm.
So there's a fine balance for those companies to where they need to hire really good salespeople, but not so good that they're going to train them and have those salespeople leave. But it's that large sales arm that makes it compelling. So what happens is if a small company like mine does a deal with a large company that's one of the publishing arms of one of the majors, um, they are going to you're going to split revenue with them is a normal deal. And I think that, of course, everybody's negotiated their own deals, but generally a lot of them are 50-50 to probably oversimplify it. So um, if I place my catalog with one of those larger companies, my hope is that their sales team will be putting my material out in front of clients. My hope is that their curation team will be putting my material on playlists and um, including it on their search requests they get from their clients. That's the thing you're sort of hoping for. So it's just simple as you can have a personal pizza and you can have 100% of it, or you can have half of a New York pie, and that's a
Mm.
different amount of food. And you have to be okay with the fact that they're going to get 50% and you're only going to get 50%. And if someone has a 50% deal with you and then you sign with another company, then that person's getting 25%. So the margin gets smaller and smaller for the little people. But
Yeah.
that's what the deal is. Why you would want to place your library with one of the majors is that you get a lot more exposure. You get included in their larger blankets, which they may have with a lot of good broadcasters. That's the ideal. Um, I think that now, having said that, with the downside is um, all of those majors put out a glut of music. Like they may put out, you know, some of them are so big they put out in a month what my whole annual production plan is. And it can be easy to get pushed down in that whole game and not have your material uh, reach the intended audience. So it could work both ways, having that distribution deal with a major. Now, that's I'm oversimplifying, distribution, and that's also putting aside international distribution. which is a whole nother topic. And it's the one that it seems everybody wants to talk about the most in this industry. Um, but yeah, that's my take on it. I think did I steer around the question at least?
Man, yeah, 100%. And yeah, an international distribution. I'm gonna put a little bookmark on that. I wanted to ask you. So, you were talking about types of blankets. What I mean, as somebody with almost 15,000 tracks in their catalog, what do deals for you look like? I mean, why would a company do a blanket? Why would what's a production blanket? What does it mean? Why would you do a production blanket versus a blanket? What's if you can get into that?
Those are great questions. Um, when people talk about a blanket license, what that means is essentially if you're a company, and let's say, for the sake of the example, let's say you are a regional cable television provider, like a Charter or Spectrum type company in a small market, or even a medium sized market. Um, you're going to do a lot of production for your various types of programming. You're going to do advertising spots. You're going to do some promos. Uh, you will have to replace music on occasion for stuff that licenses have been pulled. There's a lot of different scenarios where that cable TV provider will need music. So what they do is they'll guesstimate how much music they need and come to a production music provider like us, and we will negotiate together on what a price would be for them to essentially have access to the whole library and use as close as they can to what they've promised, their level of usage is. So let's say, for example, they may say, well, we need to use 500 cues a year, and you negotiate, well, okay, for 500 cues, and it's broadcast, we would want this much money. And so let's say that cable provider says, okay, great, let's do that. That's a blanket license. So they're supposed to report their usage to us and to the PROs as well. And that's what helps get the writers paid. And that's basically that. A production blanket is basically the same concept, but for a specific production, like a film short or a feature film or a documentary or whatever. Let's say you're going to do a documentary about surfing, and so you call up the production music company and say, well, we're going to do an hour-long documentary about the soul of the ocean, and we'll need 45 minutes worth of beds. Then we would be doing a production blanket based on that. Um, what was the third part to your question, though?
No,
Remind me again.
it's you're on the money. I feel like that's what I've asked, and also, yeah, I'm thinking about like Netflix, Amazon, all these little smaller companies, but that sounds like every movie has its own budget, right? So they have their
Totally.
own blanket licenses, right? Like within the movie. So every movie has a different budget and a different blanket license as well.
You can think of, like, if it's X size of a movie, then there's going to be a percentage of that budget that's going to be allocated for music,
Yeah.
and it works from the top down. So the first thing they're going to do is, well, what are the three or four key scenes in this movie that we need music for, that have to be good quality, expensive, well-known music. Let me retract the word good quality, because what we do is every bit as good a quality as the majors. I think maybe well-known would be the
Yeah.
better thing to say.
Yeah.
For example, let's say they're doing a war movie and they want to use a Rolling Stones track. I don't know what a Rolling Stones license costs, but I guarantee you it's more than two
It's not a
thousand
part of a
bucks.
blanket license. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a chunk of that budget, you know. So they'll populate those scenes with really expensive commercial music, and then they move down a tier. Like, well, we need a orchestral piece for this one scene, or we need. Here's what'll happen. Actually, let's say there's a club scene. We need a punk track. Well, they may not want to pay for the Sex Pistols license, or for um, I'm old, so that's my wheelhouse for a good punk band. Forgive me. Maybe I
They are
should have.
great.
For the young kids, I should have chosen Blink 182 or
Bl-
something. I don't know.
you can go throughout the generations. Doesn't matter though. Like, yeah, whatever. But
So
Blink 182. You want a punk. You want punk for that specific scene.
yeah, so you may check on the rate to license the Sex Pistols or a Clash tune and find out it's a little expensive. So that's where you can go to an independent composer or a production house or a production music library, and you can get a good quality punk track that's going to sound period authentic and is going to have the right vibe for the scene, and it's going to be a lot more affordable. And then you fill in the cracks. Well, there's going to be bumpers and segues and different things throughout the movie, and you don't want to pay tons of money for that. So that's where we really can help, is you can use a whole lot of little bits of our music, and that way the overall sound of the music throughout the movie sounds it sonically is a good quality. And then when you get to the important scenes where that Rolling Stones track plays, it really pops. Um, Another situation where a filmmaker may like production music is, let's say, in the process of the storytelling, um, it may be important for the story that the music not detract from the story. So you may not want to use a Clash or a Sex Pistols tune. You may want it to be like a lot more generic punk rock tune, maybe even without vocals. And that's where production music can help you, because everything we do it with the vocal, we do it without the vocal, we give you the stems, whatever you need. Um, and that way the music can serve the story, but stay in the back and let the narrator tell it. So that's kind of that's the crux of it.
Wow. Thank you so much for this. This is shed a lot of light for me, and I'm sure for people who are listening. Another thing we had in our mastermind is, because you do custom work. I'd love to hear your opinion about labels or companies buying catalogs, and how that works. I would love to know. But before that, I wanted to ask another question about sub-publishing. So, like,
Okay.
let's say I'm level 77, and now uh, um, you've just signed with one of the big three. Okay. Um, I want to ask. So, do you still have your sales team? Is your team still effect? So yeah. So he's doing a no with his head. And if somebody's listening, most of the people are listening. So, like, they have their team and they pitch all your stuff, right? Like, everything goes through them. And I know that another thing with Sync Bigger, with the big three, is that there are deals where they don't pay sync fees. To Or is that another thing? Like, because we were talking about the downside of it. So I would love for you to expand on these things. And was this a reason why you chose to stay independent?
Um, Let me think of where to tear into that. There's a lot of rotten deals that are going around the industry, and I I don't, out of an abundance of caution that I learned very early on in my
Age
game.
24.
I will bite my tongue about it a little bit, but yeah, there are production companies that are um, trying to find ways to maximize their profits at the expense of composers, and there's a lot of it going on. There are companies trying to build their own internal catalogs to completely circumvent our industry, which is something that I'm kind of morally opposed to. Um, and I think it's going to backfire on them in the long run because, well, I mean, if we, okay, so I could probably talk about Meta or Facebook building their own library, so they have on hand a lot of music and they don't have to do the traditional um, cue sheets and reporting and all that comes with it. They just basically will do a work for hire. You write for them, you sell them the track, you take your money, you walk away. Some of those will buy out your publishing, some will buy out your writer's share. Um, if I were a composer in that situation, I would be mindful of that. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I would happily do it. Like if a standard rate for a song is going to be, I don't know, let's put a figure on like $1,000, that a composer is going to get paid. Well, if they're going to want my publishing and my writer share, then the fee at a minimum doubles in my view. And I would hope that a lot of production music composers would understand that they have the power to do that. They have the power to say, well, if I'm not going to get any back end, then you need to pay me on the front end. And I think that's a perfectly fair ask. The other thing is when someone is buying out my rights like that, I won't lie, I'm not going to write my best material,
Mm,
uh, and
big. That's big.
that doesn't mean I won't write good material. I would write material that is of the level of quality that's appropriate for the job. But like my A-list stuff, my really good tunes, I'm going to save those for a situation where I am receiving that appropriate. Um,
It's skin in the game. It's skin in the
yeah,
game. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's 100%. And the reason I'm asking you this is because, yeah, I've seen deals with buyouts where, I mean, they buy the track out. You still get back end, but you don't get sync fees. That happens a
okay.
lot. I
Well, that's
mean,
kind of the traditional production music model.
yeah.
And honestly, that's the model that during my entire time I worked at FirstCom or Universal, um, those were the only deals that I could personally write. There were other deals that would happen, but those were done by people that were higher up than I was. 90% of that business, though, is built on that model where um, the production music company will pay the composer up front, and in exchange for that, they get the master and they get the publishing, but the composer retains the writer's share. And that's a good deal for a composer. Like uh, um, one of one of my favorite composers that I work with, I won't call him out, but he writes a song a day. And are they all bangers? A lot of them are, um, but not all of them, I'm sure. Uh,
Yeah.
and then are some of them absolute magic? Yes, some of them definitely are. And I think he or she would
Or
retain
they.
those,
They
or
maybe
they.
it's a non-binary.
Thank you. Forgive me. I
Shit. We're gonna get
excuse my
canceled
manners.
after this.
Um, yeah, he, she, or they would honestly need to keep that A level of material for premium uses, and then the bulk of their just daily work, you know, yeah, sell the publishing on that, get it out there, and get it making money.
Yeah.
That's kind of my approach.
Yeah.
Now, At level 77, we're doing a mixture of the two styles. The other style being a sync split deal where, someone comes to us with finished material. I'm not going to give them any money up front, but we will share the sync fees. We will share the publishing, and then they will still retain their full writer share. Some composers think that's more fair. If the composer thinks that's the more fair approach, I'm happy to do that deal with them. I personally think it's kind of a wash, but that's just my opinion.
Mm. What do you mean
Um,
though?
I would be happy to do either deal. Either deal's fine, and in the end, you're going to make about the same amount of money.
There you go.
Some
That's
people,
the important thing. I feel like that's the important thing you're touching on. That like and just from personal perspective and story, I've spent way too much time thinking about that kind of stuff. Like to be completely honest, just like because of that artist diva mentality, and because of all these things
yeah,
that come with being a composer and not knowing the landscape good enough. And saying stupid shit as well on the way. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like I've said a lot of stupid shit. I've acted in a lot of outrageous, dumb ways, straight up. But I feel
same,
like I feel like that's where that's where the rubber meets the road. When you're saying like, yeah, like you can get the sync fee, you can get you can get all of that and all of that, and it'll be around the same thing. Like I've also heard the approach of, like if you don't get the sync fee, one good promo can get you all this money and blah blah blah. But I mean, with what you're saying, I also feel it in the way things are today. There's such a huge amount of music out there that the chances that every one of these songs that you've done gets a promo, or one of these or something like that, would sometimes amount to what you are paid for the album upfront. So I mean, like it's kind of a chicken or egg kind of thing, and
yeah.
it's yeah, it's just like my opinion about that.
Well, one angle to look at it is that they are all essentially lottery tickets, and
Yeah.
so you're either buying short odds or long odds.
Oh my god. So good.
Those syncs split things can really pay off. They really can, but they're really rare. Um, Whereas the small, here's the thing, like people don't realize about this industry, man. The average needle drop license is closer to like $200. People get the stars in their eyes, like,
Yeah.
oh well, this trailer paid $7,000. Yes, I've had
Hmm.
plenty of tracks that I've worked on collect that type of fee, but I've had thousands and thousands and thousands collect $200.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. So, um, is that lottery ticket, or is it a lower value lottery ticket that's going to have a better payout, or is it a high value lottery ticket that is longer odds? It's your call. You decide. It's all a wash to me. What I will say is I found out recently there's a third type of deal, and this one I would like to actually warn people about. I ethically don't feel good about it, and maybe I'm wrong, but um, it's what do they call it? It's a reverse something deal. But here's how it works: you take that publishing deal that I originally spoke about, where the production music company is going to pay you up front, and in exchange for that, they're going to get the publishing, they're going to get the master. That way, they're going to own the track in perpetuity. They'll have control for one-stop licensing. Like that's the whole point of that business model. Honestly, is that it gives the company the freedom to make deals with customers and not have to go call a composer and be like, oh, is it okay if we license this for this particular use? That sort of thing. But this reverse deal that I've heard about recently that some people are offering is essentially the publishing deal, but you get no money up front. What happens is you basically give them the music, and you have a predetermined threshold for payment. As the track earns money, you build up until you hit your threshold, and then you get paid. I don't know. I just don't know about this approach. Maybe some people might have some other opinions on it. Maybe some people could educate me on it. But it seems like if, I threw out just for math, $1,000 a song. So what this reverse deal would be, instead of me paying you $1,000, I would give you nothing. As the track earns $1,000, you eventually will get that $1,000. But once it's earned that $1,000, that's the cap.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm afraid that some people may confuse that with a sync deal, thinking, oh, well, the track's earning money. I'm getting paid as the track earns money.
Mm,
But that's not the same deal.
mm,
So
wow.
I don't know. I
I
would just
I
be
did not
leery
know
about
about
that.
this. I did not know about this. Yeah.
It's a new way to do it. Now, if I were a small publisher and I wanted to aggressively grow my catalog from a business standpoint, from a publisher, it's pretty shrewd. I mean, because I could go out and write 1,000 deals and I don't owe anybody any money. And all I have to do is focus on making that money and repaying them. But that's, I guess, in my eyes, that's almost like taking a business loan from the composers instead of from a bank. You know?
Yeah. It's super weird. I mean, but I feel like a lot of the deals are structured around writers getting back end. So how does that affect the back end, that reverse deal?
Well, it would, I think in that scenario, it would function like a normal publishing deal, so that when the track is aired and broadcast, that you would still collect from your PRO, in addition to the front end, because the traditional publishing deal is, if and again, I'm not saying I pay $1,000 for all tracks, but using that for the math, if I would normally pay 1,000 for a track, you would, or the composer would still collect their broadcast performance royalty. I think this reverse deal works the same. You just don't get the front money, and the track has to earn it on its own. So
Okay.
I don't
Interesting.
know.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just a different type of viewing that kind of thing. There was a oh, man, there was one thing that I didn't write down that we wanted to circle back to, and I'm kind of blanking on. But uh, um, you were talking about quantity and quality. How do you think today, like in this day and age, how if you were a composer, let's say you have 50, 100 tracks in your catalog, like in your BMI, like you're starting to get your footing, what do you think is the best approach to go into this industry? Like, is it really like the one track a week? Is it like the numbers game? Is it the 50 bangers a year? Is it like what's your kind of approach if you were a composer right now doing this grind?
I would. I like Dan Graham's concept. I I would up from 52 cues. I would be more like 200 cues. Honestly, first and foremost, like I would go for tonnage. Um, but you also have to have some more premium products. So I really would divide it into levels. Um, I would be, as a composer, well, first of all, I got to comment on just how spoiled we are nowadays. And I've been in the production music industry long enough to have seen this come to um, there was a time when VSTs were not that good. There was a time when plugins were not that good. Um, and in the modern era, the virtual instruments are impeccable. Like cheap virtual instruments sound amazing. Logic or Pro Tools or any of them, any of the digital audio workstations come with free virtual instruments that sound better than the premium ones did 15 or 20 years ago. So we all have that working to our advantage. We all have great string sounds. We all have great drum sounds. We all have very convincing brass sounds. If you'll just take the time to program it, you know, it can be very convincing. Like I wouldn't program a horn section, but I would program a tenor, an alto, a bari, and a trumpet, and just that alone will give you so much realism in a mix. So I personally think it's wise to use those tools to create as much content as you can and do as good a job as you can mixing and mastering, but create a sizable asset. And then I would focus on some more premium stuff. And in that regard, I would do a much smaller selection of stuff that you can't reproduce with virtual instruments. And that is live horns, live drums, live strings. Just the sound of humans playing in a room together is something you can't synthesize. I mean, no matter how good you are, if you're around four of your peers, you're gonna try harder. You're gonna focus deeper. And honestly, I think that our vibration, once our vibrations mesh, I think that intellectually it raises our abilities. So I'm a big believer in live musicianship and producing records with live players, and I think they're superior when you do. And I would be spending time, in the bedroom studio, cranking out some really good stuff using virtual instruments, but I would be writing material and tracking live in a proper studio. And then maybe augment that. Maybe you do an indie pop track, and you get a great band take with drums and keys and guitar and a vocal. Well, you could take that home and you can add virtual strings to it, or you could pull up the Mellotron strings patch to give it a Beatles sound or whatever you wanted to do. But that would be my thing. Is I would try to hit different price points, I guess would be a way to say it.
Wow.
Um,
That
does that
is
advice
that is
work
a
for
fresh answer.
everybody? I don't know. Maybe some people would prefer to just do, 30% of their output and have it all be premium, or maybe they'd rather have 90% of their output and have it all be VST. I don't know. It to each his own,
Yeah.
but I would definitely be using a little bit of each.
Yeah, it brings me to think about, like, I feel like knowing one's strengths is one of the most important things here, and also like being able to say, hey, yeah, this is what I can do really fast. Like I can crank one of these a day. To be honest, like, for me, let's say it's vocals. Like I can do them real quick, real fast, and real crispy. And I can easily do 1 2 a day of these. Like if I'm being honest, like I sometimes I have a label that sends me stuff and goes like, yeah, you can get on each of these tracks, and then I just crank 2 tracks and I have 50% in the track. Like it's just that's the question I feel like that comes into my head, that people have to ask themselves. Like if you're really good at making hip hop beats, that's cool. Like make it as your tier one thing, but like maybe have a deal with some other label that pays you up front, and then you can actually record the record strings on it, or like
Yeah,
record some funk guitar on it, or have something like that where uh, um you're working in tiers, and it also keeps your job less boring for sure. Like we are all machines to some capacity. Like you can say all you want, like it's art and all that kind of stuff, but it is, in the end of the day, like I want to turn this into my job. I want to, like, for me, it's something I
yeah.
want to be serious of and have it as instead of a shitty 9 to 5 bar job, or whatever, like. So that's kind of the way that I see what you explained, and I really resonate with it, and I'm going to take action on it, actually, because you've really lit some light bulbs in my head. So I'm actually going to go back and listen to it, and I recommend the
Wonderful.
listeners do that as well.
You there's a gentleman, Ira Glass, and I think he's like a radio host of a pretty well known radio show, but he stuck in my brain because and I'm going to murder what he said. He said it very eloquently, so I'm going to mangle it, but I'll get as close as I can. And he said that when you're starting out, it's wise to do as much work as you can. And the fact is, you're going to know that it's falling short. You're going to understand, like, that your work is not as good as the people that inspired you. And that's okay. Like, keep moving forward, keep suffering through that, because what it is that alone is the sign that you have good taste, which means that as you continue to do the work, you're going to develop the skills, you're going to develop the insights, and you're going to, over time, close that gap. And I thought that was beautiful advice. So that's why I'm like of the mindset, well, you should write a lot and write at different tiers so that you get lots of practice in and lots of reps.
Mm,
Um,
yep.
so I hope that
Yeah, man.
advice
It's
helps somebody.
it's gonna help somebody because it's a direct continuation of last week's episode, of Gallo, a dude who did promos for, like, he did broadcast for the NBA. Like he would write, mix, and master a track in a day every time, like, because there were games, and they would come up to him every day, and he would basically work for them. And he speaks about how instrumental it was in his development as an artist, right? Like having these constraints and clear boundaries to work within is just a huge, huge, huge key. I feel like, yeah, man, it's there's so much light you shed on this, for sure, for me.
Gallo, I will say, like, he does epitomize that, because um, that is a driven and hardworking man, and I'll only know this because we have an album with him on it, and it's excellent, and it's probably like his normal tier stuff, like I don't even think it's his premium stuff, and it's really really good. So he clearly is someone that epitomizes that. He puts in the work and he has mastered his craft, and it shows.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like, something in me resists and envies it at the same time. Like this insane. I thought that I had like extreme work ethic, and then I see people like him. I'm like, nah, I got so much more to walk. Like I have so much longer to walk on this path. Um, Man, I feel like this is going to give people so much to think about. We're gonna have to have a round two about trailerization, because I feel like this is just we've packed this episode with so much, man. I'm so
Awesome.
grateful for you and for meeting you again, and I feel like we're definitely gonna do one when we meet in person next time. but I'm definitely putting in mind like a round two about trailerization with you if you'd be interested. And I want to ask you before we get off, what what are you grateful for?
Oh man, I have so much gratitude. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the problems I have first and foremost that have kept me humble and that have made me work with difficult things and think things through and figure them out organically. So, I'm grateful for that. I have so many blessings that I'm grateful for. I mean, I have a matching pair of ears that function fairly well, and I have taken I have mistreated them so thoroughly. and, and the fact that they still function is great. Um, but I'm very grateful for the path that I've been able to lead. I'm grateful that I haven't gotten a lot of the things in life that I thought I wanted. Um, I thought I wanted to be a rock star. And now that I'm a middle aged man, thank God I never had fame or money because I would not have known how to manage either one. Um, but I did land on a way to literally get paid to listen to music. How lucky can a man be? I mean, what else can you ask for? I
Yeah,
spend
man.
the day in the
And
studio.
yeah,
I get to you know be a music slut, and when I'm burnt out, I put the pencil down and I crank the monitor up and abuse my ears some more, and listen to new music and or old music. I have a collection of music that I have everything that hit the Billboard charts from 2007 all the way back to 1897 or so. So I'm not kidding when I say like I'll listen to almost anything.
that's
Uh,
amazing. That's amazing. Man, I feel so juiced up after this to make a lot of music and to and just go back and listen to this. And I'm grateful for you today, man. I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the beautiful energy you bring to rooms because like your energy is you're talking about yourself being a middle-aged man, but you have the energy of a young person. Like I would not be taken aback if you would have told me, like if somebody would have told me you're a rock star or somebody who does a show every day. Like you just have a very effortless energy about you. And um I really commend you for that. And I feel like, yes, you definitely found what brings you and the ones around you light. So I'm grateful for you and for you coming on this podcast.
and I am so grateful for you as well. I knew just the instant we spoke that you had a wonderful frequency that you were vibrating at, and I was going to be very harmonious with you and have a wonderful conversation. And we did. In fact, I think we spoke for 45 minutes and barely talked about music.
Yeah, an hour. Thank you, man.
So
Thank you so much for coming on.
it's been